All right, starting the Steelers Depot live stream for Monday, June 15th. Let me get the link pulled up here. As always, we're here for the next hour, so let me find it. Hopefully, okay, there it is. And let me know if you need me to send you the link, Dave, and we'll
Yeah,
get
yeah, if you will.
started. All right, YouTube's being a little slow for me today, but we'll get it going here. All right, where do I want to be at? All right, I will send you the link, Dave. And as always, we are here for the next hour to answer whatever Steelers questions you have, guys. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Monday. Sitting here getting close to finishing up the 50 longest or the longest plays over the last 50 years. What a trip it's been.
Yeah, you really sped through that. That's been a lot of fun, though. Gotten a good amount of feedback on that. Hello, Eric. Thank you for being here. Thanks to everybody here in the chat. Again, leave your Steelers questions in the chat below, and I will send Dave the link here so he can also see what's going on. Samantha, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. What I have open up here to start, though, Dave, while we let some of the chat filter in to begin with, is James Conner was on ESPN, I believe, today talking about Big Ben's return and put it very bluntly, and not only in terms of saying how well Ben looked when they were throwing together about a month ago, but also how badly Ben wants to win a Super Bowl. And we all know how big of a competitor Roethlisberger is. So, not surprising, but still good and refreshing to hear from James Conner.
Yeah, look, I mean, those are kind of things you would expect him to say. I don't think anybody was caught off guard by
Hmm.
anything that he said. This is, I think, was like the second or third time that he's been asked to comment on how Roethlisberger looked during that one throwing session that obviously went viral a couple of weeks ago. To my understanding, they've probably worked out together a few more times since then. I
Hmm.
know all those offensive guys were in town. What was it, a weekend or so ago, or something like that? So look, everything's staying on course right now, and the hope is that Roethlisberger and James Conner and Juju and everybody stays healthy this year. If they do, that this team certainly should be expected to compete for a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Mutated Genomes has a super chat for the tip jar. Thank you very much, my dude. George,
Thank you,
James,
thank you, thank you.
Matthew is here. Matthew has a question to start off the live stream. Do you think the Steelers will express any interest in Obi Melanfonwu? Seems like post two team cuts should be a veteran minimum low risk safety signing. I would put the odds at no. You could say that about pretty much any free agent, but I am also all for adding any sort of safety depth because this team desperately needs some.
Yeah, we've talked about this several times, especially in I think in these in these YouTube live sessions or whatnot the last couple weeks, and I'll be surprised if they add anybody at this. Now, look, I mean, injuries happen, can happen once training camp gets started, and you never know, the guys, the players that they'll add off the street for minimum prices. At that point, could Obi Melanfon? Been a while since I've said
Yeah.
had to say that name, Obi. Let's just call him Obi. But
Hmm.
could he be a potentially a player added that way through training camp via because of injury? I suppose it's possible. But as far as guys that you would think that would add serious competition, especially as a backup safety right now, which this team could use, I would think the likelihood of such happening would happen, right before the start of the season, maybe via a trade or something.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with any potential roster acquisitions. Kevin Colbert, it's going to happen that around that third week of August, right before or after the third preseason game. That's kind of in step with what he's done the past 5 years. So don't expect anything to happen if it happens until then. Mutated Genome. Why were the Steelers so bad on opening drives? They are horrible on opening drives. Thank you for doing the story. Can you do a series on why they're so bad at bubble screens too? Well, bubble screens are part of those opening drives. I think we'll have a video or an article tomorrow that kind of showcases that. Yeah, I have the article here. Going to go through a study. Pittsburgh was the worst in the NFL last year in first possession drives, just 6 points, only team to not score a touchdown. And I'm going to try to answer it myself. And it's going to be, I'm sure, a combination of factors. It's not exclusive to the loss of Ben, but certainly part of it. And so I'm interested to go through this study and really try to get at the heart of what went wrong on first possessions. Hard punt.
One thing real quick that
Hmm.
going through some numbers yesterday when writing up Gil Brandt, talking about the Steelers backup quarterback situation being the ninth biggest roster hole in the entire NFL. When you go back and you look at the personnel and the snaps and all offensively, I tell you something that jumps out is the fact that the Steelers offense ran 455 total offensive plays last season, with one of either Deion Kane, Johnny Holton, or Tevin
Oh
Jones
my
on
goodness. What was the number?
the
450? Oh
455
my
total
goodness.
plays with at least one of those guys on the field. Okay, and that's that. How many plays did they run last year? Shy of 1,000.
Probably around 1,000.
Right. 93 of those 455 plays included two or more of those
Oh
players on the field at the same time.
my
So
goodness.
so that's right. That's right at 10% that you had two of either Deion Kane, Johnny Holton, and Tevin Jones on the field. Tevin Jones and Johnny Holton no longer on a team, if unless I'm mistaken, right?
No, you're correct. Jones went to Dallas and Holton's in the ether somewhere.
I know I'm correct. That's why I phrased it
Okay.
that way. Deion Kane. Look, I understand. There's a lot of optimism, regarding his limited time that he played last season. But let's just be right up front. This guy's got a lot to prove, and he's not a guaranteed to make the roster this year. This guy was basically a cast off from the Colts last year that the Steelers needed because of injuries and all like that. And oh yeah, they had this guy named Dante Moncrief last year that probably played 50 more snaps than he should have after the Week 1 game against the New England Patriots. Now, look, did Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges deserve to go to the Pro Bowl last year? No, I think we both agree
It's
on
another one of those
that.
questions I shouldn't answer.
Right, but let's take a hard look at how much of that personnel we're missing around those two guys for a good part of the season.
Hmm. Yeah, it's all important context. That it was not just the quarterback situation; it was the run game, where guys like Trey Edmonds and Tony Brooks James are getting the ball. Receivers, you mentioned Holton and Tevin Jones, and the mess that was. So, and then tight end. There were games where they were down to one tight end, basically Zach Gentry, a rookie, overwhelmed. So, a lot of factors to consider, and hopefully, the series I'm working on will explore that and shed some more light on the situation.
And let's not forget, you had a guy like Xavier Grimble, play some meaningful snaps early in the
Hmm.
season, and you see what they thought of him real quick.
Yeah, out the door he went. Yeah, and then the Vanette trade did not work either. So a lot of issues clearly. Hard Punk Core, Tunch and Wolf during the latest edition of In the Living Room said they saw Ben and Ben looks lean, focused, and ready to go. I believe it. I think that obviously all that stuff about Ben being fat and out of shape and the beard was so overdone and just the boredom of the off season. And that honestly, well, I don't think Ben's in the best shape of his life. That's the cliche stuff that's meaningless. The fact that he had to rehab and that he didn't have to rest his body this offseason the way he would at coming off, regular seasons in which he played the entire season, allowed him to do more cardio, to work more. Obviously, he was working just to rehab. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was in better shape this year than, say, this time last year.
Plus, you got how many days until the season starts now? 91. You
Yeah,
know,
somewhere around 90.
uh, come get me if he looks fat. Come the start of the regular
Hmm.
season.
Yeah, I think Ben's going to be A-OK weight wise. We'll just have to see how that arm feels and looks, but all signs are positive there so far. Samantha Ecorn, buy or sell fans in stadiums this year? Dave, I'll let you tackle this question first.
Yeah, I think you'll see it. I mean, what percentage? I obviously don't know. That's above my pay grade. I mean, obviously, is a little bit concerning to see some of these news reports, coming out about some states, kind of going backwards here, with the COVID-19 and all like that. Look, there's so much out there. You don't know what to believe, not to believe, whatever. Take your favorite report and go from there. I
Hmm.
think we will see fans in the stadium. To what percentage I do not know at this point. Look, it's going to be kind of hard to tell to decide what percentage of the season ticket holders get in, right? You
True.
know, that's going to be interesting to see play out in itself. The optimism is in me, and That's quite a big person that lives inside of me. That and the two others along with me. Look, I still tend to think that it's going to be all right by the time the dust settles. That still going to be a fairly healthy attendance. Obviously going to be down, but overall, I think it's going to be probably better than what people expect.
Yeah, obviously, no one has any answers to this right now. It's such a fluid and ever changing situation. Here's my expectation, at least as we see it here, June 15th, is that no fans in the preseason, half capacity to at least start the regular season, and they'll have to kind of play it by ear from then. That's my guess. I think what the governor of Texas said for college football, don't expect above 50% in stadiums. And if the governor of Texas is putting that as the ceiling, then it's hard to see other states really going above that. So we'll see. It could vary state to state. I suppose that's possible. Maybe the NFL would probably prefer something uniform, but I think the NFLPA or NFL, someone's projecting $3 billion in lost revenue if there are not fans. But to a point that you've been making, Dave, and I'll bring you in on this one, the NFL seems to be exploring the things you've talked about borrowing from future years to avoid the disaster that would be the cap significantly dropping for next season.
Milk or what?
I know you're taking your victory lap.
Look,
You don't need that bike that you got. You got your victory lap.
yeah, yeah. Just believe it or not, I'm riding 25 miles a day
A
on that
day?
thing.
How
If you
long's
could
that
play,
take? That's awesome.
yeah, 25 miles a day.
That's great.
Tom Pelissero wrote today. We'll write this up at some point, maybe tonight or in the morning. Preliminary calls with the NFL on projections for the 2021 salary cap, and it's safe to say a season without fans would have at least a $3 billion impact, billion with a B on revenue. Pelissero goes on to say the collective bargaining states, and this is something I've been talking about quite extensively, states that the NFL and the NFLPA must bargain in good faith that there's a significant revenue shortfall. Bargaining hasn't started yet, per Smith, but the reminder is that it's an 11-year CBA, so there are always ways to spread out any hit and ensure the cap doesn't take a 1-year dip. Obviously, that means borrowing from future years. I fully expect, and I'm not surprised no talks have had yet, because what's the hurry right now?
Mhm.
Get more reports, get as much information before you really sit down and
Right.
put a pen and paper to this thing. But Alex, look. I've said this several times. The last thing the NFL and the NFLPA wants is this cap to go backwards in 2021, because it's going to cost a lot of middling players their jobs, and
Mhm.
that's the last thing that both sides, I think, want. So once again, come get me when they don't work out an agreement.
Yeah, I agree. It's not going to go down. The question is, will it be stagnant or will they find a way to have it do the roughly, what, 10% ish increase that's been common year to year? Can they pull that off? And those are questions I don't have the answer to. I don't know if you have the answer to that, but that's what I'd be curious to know.
I envision them stair stepping this thing,
So a normal
because
rate of increase, like a normal
well,
season.
whatever they deem a normal rate for the next, let's say, 5 or 6 years, spread out.
Okay.
Because here's something that you don't want to happen. You don't want the cap to go down or even stay stagnant, and then the following year go up, 50 million or whatever.
Hmm.
That doesn't do any good for the game either. It's good for teams to have an idea of what to expect here with this thing. And obviously, a cap decrease would cause job loss. You don't want
Hmm.
to have a 1-year job loss, and franchises having to gut themselves just for 1 year.
Sure.
So I kind of envision some sort of stair step that might run through the next 5 to 6, 7 years, something
All
like
right.
that.
Fair enough. Again, you guys here in the chat, thank you for being here. Dave and I will be here till 8 p.m. Eastern time. Leave your questions, Steelers related questions about anything Pittsburgh related during this offseason in the chat, and we will answer it. Mutated Genome says the inability to score on opening drives and poor execution on bubble screens goes back several years. Oh, I remember Bruce Arians getting a lot of crap for that. I mean, I think it was overblown. I think it was a more
I do
successful
too.
play than what people realized. It wasn't the most successful play, but it was better than what most people think.
Go back and look at the stats and I think I've got some on Steelers Depot as well too. Talking about any kind of wide receiver screens. Now, I'm not talking about those little flip passes to Juju underneath, which they got really predictable with the shovel pass there for a while. I'm talking about the true full blown wide receiver screens out to the side, whether they be tunnel, whether they be bubble, smoke, anything along those lines. You got to look at it at what it is. It's a run game alternative, and you got to look at it as if you were looking at a run play, and
Mhm.
that's a successful run rate or rate that goes along with that. And overall, I don't think they were bad. I think it's easy for people to kind of point to, but it doesn't happen as much as people think in games either.
Absolutely. It was elongated run game. Andrew Pels, even if Juju has a bounce back year without Roethlisberger in the short future, I'm not sure I'd want to pay any receiver number one money. What do you think? For me, I just pay for the production. If Juju has a bounce back year, I think he will, then I'm going to, at the very least, franchise tag him. So we'll see what happens. I understand the concern, especially with all the other salary cap considerations to make right now. But if Juju bounces back, I want to keep your homegrown talent. This is how this team is built. Their roster basically at every position for the longest time, sans corner, and I want to continue that trend. All right, Dave, I have an article here. You wrote this a little bit ago. Deadline for Steelers to sign outside linebacker Bud Dupree to extension now 1 month away. Readers can check it out on the website on Steelers Depot. What just overall takeaway should people have reading this article?
I think the overall take should be A. That's the next line in in the sand that people that fans need to be looking forward as far as money being spent this offseason. We'll
Hmm.
get our clear answer, barring the league changing this deadline because of the COVID-19 and all, which I suppose could happen. I mean, we're in a lot of uncharted territory right now, but my heart tells me that, and my gut tells me they're not going to push back this date. So we're exactly 1 month away, and right now, unless we've missed it, there's been no really reports about any contract negotiations with anybody right now, and that includes Cam Hayward, and really that makes sense with all the concerns about the cap and all like that. Look, I don't think teams want to do anything right now, not just the Steelers, but any team in general, not knowing maybe some plans that might be put in place as far as future years in a salary cap. So, will the league buckle down here in the next couple of weeks and make those talks happen? Perhaps you would think by the time training camps get underway that teams will have a better idea what to look forward to with the cap. Now, unfortunately, the Steelers, as things stand right now, are scheduled, I think, open camp at July 22nd, and that's 1 week after the July 15th deadline.
Hmm.
I guess the long and short of it is, as of right now, there's no reason to be optimistic about the Steelers getting a deal done with Bud Dupree, especially in light of, I think that they really want to get a deal done with Cameron Hayward this summer before the start of the regular season. And if Bud Dupree's smart, he's going to hold the line for 17 million at least per season, with about $25 million being paid to him in 2020. That might be just a little bit too rich for the Steelers' blood right now,
Hmm.
all things considered with the pandemic and all like that. So I was 50-50 on this a couple of weeks ago. I'm probably 35-65 now.
Okay.
65% chance that it does not get done, and the more that we don't hear about anything happening, that meter will keep ticking in the other direction there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were still 50-50 if those odds decrease, but got my answer there. And yeah, it is hard to be optimistic about that stuff right now. Face Windu, what happened to Sammy Coates in his enigmatic 2016 season? Just bad hands, maybe some mental issues with working through the drops, and I think he had a broken finger at some point. Did he have the Moncrief disease first, or he had a hand injury too? I can't quite remember.
Who asked that question?
Face Windu.
Oh, that's a great question because I just went over. I just was watching and wrote up that play
Right, let me
this
pull it
morning.
up. Yep.
I think, and that great game that he had against the Jets. What an up and down game that was, right? Didn't I'm trying to remember when that finger did happen. If it was later in the game when it was the drop. I think he had the catch kind of earlier in that game. I thought. When did I write it up? Left in the first quarter,
Hmm.
and I think later in that game is when he had that one. Was it that game that it went off his hand or whatnot? Regardless, he even though that was a career game for him, he never rebounded from it.
Right.
And you'd think, how does a guy have to rebound from a career game? That's exactly what didn't happen with him. And he's all but about washed out right now. I wish I had the answer to it. Here's the thing: you want to talk about a guy that didn't have really huge per season production coming out of Auburn, right? Wasn't it his career high? Something like, I don't know, what, 38 catches or something? Do
That
you remember?
sounds about right. Just a deep threat.
Yeah, just kind of a deep threat, and that he was kind of that one trick ponyish kind of guy anyway. And I'm not convinced that uh, he had a full understanding maybe at times of what he was looking at across from him, and then you throw in the hand situation with him on occasion. I don't think it was all just the bad finger, but I certainly don't think it helped his situation there. So yeah, that's an interesting one. There was a time there that that Jets game where you're thinking, man, that kid's turning the corner and maybe they have something there, and then it just went to nothing.
Yeah, I think it was just this combination of factors I talked about. But was that really the only 2 touchdowns the Coates caught in his NFL career? Was that Jets game? Really?
Yes, it seemed like he had like four though,
Yeah, so
didn't
that's what I'm
it?
thinking, like 4 or 5 career. Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, hard punt
He
course.
he he. Well, here's what it is. He
Mhm.
should have had 4 or 5.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And there you go. Hard punt core with a warning to Dave. Dave, be careful when defending those bubble screens. That kind of stuff incites fan riots. Hey,
Look,
uh,
you know how Alex and I and Matthew work, man. We look at the tape and we try to put it in black and white for people, and
mhm.
we don't make a lot of fans that way sometimes.
I remember being on some message boards in that Arians kind of day before Steelers Depot, and bubble screens was the topic. Solarverse 6, hey, y'all love the show. Thank you very much. If the Steelers decide to franchise tag Juju, what is the cost on that per year? And will the Steelers cap look better than this past year coming in? Very cap centric questions, Dave. I'll let you take this one.
Well, I mean, we have to, I think, start with what the franchise tag number for wide receivers were this year, right?
Yeah, and that
And
number's not set in stone for next year, but you could ballpark it.
right, and I believe the franchise tag for wide receivers was almost $18 million. So let's just say it's 19
Okay.
for 2021. That's a lot of money to tag a receiver. So in order to deserve that, Juju's going to have a heck of a bounce back season. At least at the bare minimum, I would say 85 catches, and of course, well over 1,000 yards, and 7 or more touchdowns. So that's A. B. Look, like any Steelers team, they spend to the cap, and there is going to, and let's assume they get a deal done with Hayward before the start of this regular season, and let's assume that he's the only one that gets a deal done, that none of the other guys, including Dupree, get a deal done. They're still going to be up against the cap. Now, they're going to have a lot of guys head off, going into unrestricted free agency that are going to be tough to prevent from happening. So I guess what the question is it feasible that they tag Juju and work through that? The answer is yes. But he has to deserve it, and B, once he does get the tag, as is usual, the goal at that point would be to work out a long term extension to him with him by the middle of July, which would be
Hmm.
a year from now, which would be the goal, just as it is with Dupree this year. So am I confident that such a thing will happen? No. Can it happen? It all depends on the season Juju has.
It does, and if they were to tag him, then just like Dupree, you're saying that Juju worth long term is 18 to 19 million per year in all likelihood, correct?
That's correct. When's the last time you seen a tag player sign an extension with a new money average lower than the tag money?
Well, you would know the answer to that better than I would. What is the answer to that? I assume rarely, if ever.
No, yeah, I can't come up with one for you.
Yeah. And then to the second point, will the Steelers cap look better than this past year? Now it's a little vague cap wise, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's a loaded question because of how they like to massage the cap. I mean,
Hmm.
let's say they get a deal done with Cam Hayward between now and the start of the regular season. I can guarantee you that will have some sort of roster slash option bonus in it, that can be converted into a signing bonus come March when it's due. That will help eat that along with a good portion of the base salary can be turned into a signing bonus that will help alleviate some money there. You're going to have a few people that you're going to have some your yearly cap casualties. We'll have to see what happens with Ben. There's people say, well, after this season, if Ben bounces back, might Ben want to sign maybe another 2 or 3 year extension? I'm not going to say it's impossible, as I like to say, but I I mean, that's an option there. There are ways to massage the cap, plain and simple. So they will keep the players, the good players that they want to keep. And if Juju is deserving of that, based on what he did in 2020, then yes, it can happen.
I will say though, with all the free agents they have, it's just going to be impossible to retain them all, especially assuming these extensions don't happen this summer, and so they will lose some good talent. And then to the other part about the cap is just, I know we probably don't expect the cap to go down, but we just have no idea what the cap's going to look like next year and how they're going to structure it and what's going to happen. So just a lot of uncertainty cap wise. It's hard to answer that question, I think, right now.
Right. Look, I mean, guys like Filer and Matt Filer and Mike Hilton, man, and James Conner, I fully expect those guys to be allowed to walk.
Hmm.
Cameron Sutton, there's a good chance that he walks.
What about
After the
Villanueva?
there's a decent chance that he walks as well. You can't keep them all,
Right.
unfortunately. The fact that they're returning, the amount of guys that they're returning this year is just really, when you look at it league wide, it's pretty astronomical and b encouraging.
And that's a good segue to these next, and I'll pair these questions together. It's one from Jeremy Barbati, who says, it's like this team was built for this season, a culture of like minded, true professionals, returning almost everyone. The chemistry and talent are there. They could come out to a very hot start. And then Michael Brennan, a minute or two later, asked, do you think the Steelers will start out slow in the beginning of the year? But I'm more on Jeremy's thought here, where they're going to start out really well and have a leg up while each team has a lot of adversity to go through in these really unprecedented territory and season. I think the Steelers having that continuity of a veteran team, a franchise quarterback, the same head coach, same GM, as you've said, Dave, and written about, returning the majority of the key pieces, not relying on the rookie class. That's going to give them a leg up over, let's say, a Cleveland with a new head coach and just a whole new system.
Yeah, look at all those new coaches in Cleveland and how many of those new players that have come in, either A, the draft, or B, via free agency, have even met some of these coaches face to face
Right.
yet.
I'm sure they haven't. I mean, there would be no opportunity to really meet face to face yet.
Right, unless some of these players are getting treatment, right? And
Yeah.
and even so, I don't think they're technically allowed to meet with the coaches there. I don't think people are given that this part of the equation that much due, and it's a reason why Steeler fans should have high expectations, not only for the 2020 season, but at the first 4 games of the season as well too. The Steelers really should have a leg up on their opponents because of the way this offseason has transpired. It'll be very disappointing if this team is 2-2, is 2-2 or worse come the first quarter turn.
Yeah, just look at week one. You're facing the Giants team with new head coach and Joe Judge. And again, that's going to be his first game, and it's going to be them just trying to play catch up this entire time while Pittsburgh. And again, I know these situations are not one to one, but I lean on the fact that Tomlin and Colbert have been through a loss of an offseason before with the 2011 lockout. So they started a camp. That's how they began their year, essentially. And so they've been through this before. It's not going to be brand new to them, obviously, under different circumstances, more severe circumstances, league wide, worldwide, but it's not a brand new thing to this coaching staff, and that's a big advantage.
Stefan Wisniewski quoted on Steelers.com in a post this morning. It's definitely an advantage to be a veteran. It'll be tough for rookies across the league to learn things virtually and then just show up and do it. How many times have we written or talked about that so far
Several.
this offseason, Alex? I'm sure there are still a few rookies who will be able to do it. You hope there is, especially when it comes to the Steelers. It's definitely a big advantage being a veteran. I have been in a lot of different offenses. I have had 5 or 6 offensive coordinators in 9 years. At the end of the day, we all run the same plays. It's a matter of what you call it, how you do the little things differently. I am learning what the Steelers call it, and we'll be ready to go. I don't have my concerns about the Wisniewskis or the Eric Ebrons learning and learning the verbiage and all that quick. I do worry about the Claypools and the Highsmiths and the McFarlands as far as learning that stuff early. And it's one thing I've written and talked about most of the offseason. I think the expectations on those guys are a little too high right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Eric McDay, circling back to Juju. I don't think Juju is not a clutch player. Past 2017, late fourth quarter, caught it short on third and four. 2018, Saints fumble, Ravens fumble last year, all cost the team crucial wins. Your thoughts? Is he young? I know he's awesome, but I'm hoping it's just him being young and not focused. I don't know if focus is the issue there. Ball security is part of it. That stuff is disappointing, obviously. They were crucial, costly plays. There's no arguing that, but they're not it's not a pattern that I'm particularly concerned with, to be honest with you.
I just want him to hold on to the football in crucial moments.
Yeah, I hear you. He has to.
because that's what it boils down to. He's just not holding on to the football in crucial moments. Now, I don't remember that being a problem at USC with him.
Yeah, I don't either. But yeah, we'll see. It's a big year for Juju in a lot of ways, obviously, for his long-term, health of the team, staying with the team, and what money he's going to make, whether that's going to be in Pittsburgh or playing elsewhere. Tim Ray, ever been to any Steelers away games? How do the stadium's experiences compare to Heinz Field? I have not actually, Tim. Dave, I imagine you've been to maybe some at some point. What are your thoughts?
I have been to them in, let's see, New Orleans, Atlanta, and Jacksonville, with Jacksonville being the only regular season game in there. See, that's why I'm no longer. Last time I went to a regular season game was an opener in Jacksonville back in the '90s, and that was they not only got beat by Jacksonville in that game, but I think that's the game that Greg Lloyd
Mm.
tore his knee up in as well too. But I'll tell you this, and there were you. It was not hard to spot Steeler fans.
Well, in Jacksonville, yeah, I imagine that's not hard to do.
Well, I mean, in New Orleans or Atlanta
True.
either, man. I'm here to tell you, I got the luxury. Me and my best friend, rest in peace, uh, went and saw the preseason game in Atlanta and the Steelers. It was Michael Vick's. It was the first game of preseason game of that year, and it was Michael Vick's debut late
Mm,
in that game.
wow.
So I got to say that I saw Michael Vick's preseason debut in that game in Atlanta, but never have really, since the '90s been to really any Steelers games or regular season games. That is.
Gotcha. Jeremy Barbati, what's the most likely place that Ben's cap space will go once he retires? Another quarterback, two or three quality depth players? Hard to say. Who knows what the roster is going to look like by then? They could be more adventurous in free agency. We'll have no idea because honestly, by the time Ben retires, it's very likely that Kevin Colbert's retired and maybe Marquise Pouncey's retired, and who knows what's going on with Mike Tomlin at that point. So it's going to be a new era for this team, and it's hard to pin down any sort of answer based on something that's going to happen 2 to 3 years from now. Tim Ray, do these new co-owners affect the organization at a football level at all? Also, do you think there will be any Steelers-esque DNA infused into Carolina? References David Tepper, the former Steelers minority owner who now owns the Carolina Panthers. If you didn't see the news, we have it on Steelers Depot. A pair of Philadelphia 76ers co-owners have bought minority stakes in the Steelers, Josh Harris and David Blitzer. It's apparently at less than 5%, according to Bloomberg. To answer the question directly here, Tim, from a football level, almost certainly not. I would say they are not going to have any sort of influence at a football level in any meaningful way. And to the second part of that question about any Steelers SDNA infused into Carolina, sure. I mean, I'm sure David Tepper, he knows what the gold standard, a model organization like Pittsburgh is run. I'm sure he wants to emulate that. He's talked about that several times before. So, what exactly does that mean? It's hard to say. I'm sure they want stability, community outreach, things like that. But yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be some carryover from that mindset in the Carolina.
Well, they already got the salary cap guy, right?
Samir Suleiman. Yeah,
Right.
assistant cap. I'm just glad they didn't get. I thought they were gonna get Brandon Hunt or some scouts or something. That was honestly really a big worry of mine.
I think Brandon Hunt knows
Yeah,
what's coming for him with the Steelers. So he should be the guy that succeeds Kevin Colbert here in a
yeah.
couple of years. One would think.
Brandon Hunt, the pro scouting coordinator, is a guy the Steeler fans need to get to know because whenever Colbert does retire, whenever that is, and sometime in the near future, I know Omar Khan's a possibility. I know Omar Khan's probably the more well-known name right now because his name came up in GM circles in, I think, Seattle, Miami about a decade ago. I think it was maybe a little less, but I think Brandon Hunt is more likely to get the job right now. Jeremy Barbati, I saw Wheaton go for 200 in Seattle, and I saw Juju fumble in NOLA. Yeah, that big Wheaton game, that was kind of his Sammy Coates kind of game, where that was just that one big moment, and that was kind of it. Seattle was a good time despite the loss. New Orleans was absolutely not. LOL. All right, fair enough. Hard Punk Core, I've been to the Steelers games when they visit New Jersey to play the Jets or Giants. Those games are just like a home game. Every time I was at a game 4 or 5 times over the years, the home team was booed. So yeah, I mean, Steelers fans, we know how they, I wouldn't say travel, they're already there. We know how that goes if you're a Steelers fan. But yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh always represents, especially in some of these West Coast games. All right, let's see. Waiting for the chat again. We are here for about another half hour. Feel free to ask Dave and I any Steelers questions you guys may have. Dave, you're wrapping up your big play series. I'll pull up one I haven't pulled up yet already. While I do that, have you had a personal favorite now that you're basically at the end of this thing?
Ah, boy, that reliving that fake punt, several years ago with Troy and Miller and Hope. That was fun. I really had forgotten about that one, to be honest with you. Man, it's just so many different ones. I don't say there's really. I mean, heck, I'm just writing up the final one now. The back to back 97-yard touchdowns to Juju. Those were fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, him winning off the line of scrimmage in both those, kind of with the releases that he had on both those, is what primarily that did, the after the catch ability, obviously, but led to those things happening. I think a lot of the early ones that really when going back and having my memory jarred on there were some fluke things that happened. you know and then obviously you get to the in the 1980s and the whole Mark Malone, that should have never happened. That was kind of a busted coverage there. Obviously just a few runs in this thing, Sidney Thornton
Mm-hmm.
and reliving kind of not remembering the burst that he had, out of the backfield. So look, I mean, I don't care if anybody else has enjoyed it or not. I've enjoyed going back through and finding, last 50 longest offensive plays per season. Now, obviously, I do hope people enjoyed it there. A lot of time and research went in it. I think I'm most amazed too that I was able to find, I think, like what, all but two or three
Mhm.
plays.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I think I saw a lot of positive comments about that, so about the series you did in some of these plays, and so I think it was well worth it for each side. What was the shortest, longest play? Was it like 52 yards? I think one of them was
That's a great
like
question. What was it? It had to be like 50 something
I'd
yards,
say it
I
was a
think.
52 yarder. I don't know if it was Huntley or if it was someone else. I see a couple of 50s in here in '04, but I think there was one that was shorter than 58. Let me scroll
You
through
had
here.
just a couple years where you had matching,
Mhm.
matching big plays. Let's
Here's one
see, you
from
had,
'99, Richard Huntley for 52. I think that was the shortest long play of a season since '70. I don't think there was one shorter than 52, unless I'm
you
wrong on
might
that.
you might be right, and unfortunately, that's one that I don't have the
Mm.
footage on. One of the few that I don't. I know. Let's see, they had a let's see, a 56. Yeah, I think you're right, Alex. I think that might be the shortest longest play.
And how many were runs? You got Huntley, Thornton. Was there a Parker? I think Parker was tied for one of these.
And I think you had Mendenhall was tied for one.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't many, 3, 4, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Weren't many runs.
And you'll finish the series, what, tomorrow? Because you got 2 seasons left, 18, 19?
I've got. In fact, I'm about to put 18s up probably as soon as we get off of this chat here. I got it all ready to go, so that'll be up for the night crowd. That's the
Cool.
97 yarder against the Broncos.
Any teas for next series, or are you still thinking about what you're going to do
I,
next?
I'm open. People in the chat, if you got any suggestions of what would be a great year by year, I don't know, kind of series or any kind of series in
Hmm.
general, we're always open to those ideas.
Yeah, let us know. Chat. A couple more questions have come in. Jeremy Barbati, have you guys taken a look at Cam Sutton against the Rams? I have not. I apologize to Jeremy. I know you talked about that on the podcast, I believe. I just have not looked at Sutton against the Rams yet.
No, I haven't gone back and looked at that as well. Trying to get through this series and just want to make sure we keep enough content flowing on the site to keep everybody properly entertained at this time, and
Right.
that's not easy to do
Mm,
right now.
right. That's that's an understatement. I'm working on the for those who follow the site and my YouTube channel, Artie Burns' biggest bust series, but video editor I'm using has given me all kind of fits right now, so a slight delay on that while I work out the technical bugs. Let's see. Steel Dick dictate, do you believe the recent impact of COVID-19 on the Cowboys and Texans will have an impact on the NFL season being conducted this year? I think that, Dave, honestly, is going to be the biggest challenge the NFL has to face this year. I don't think it's going to stop the season, but I think how they have to handle quarantine, because you're not going to see a small number of positive cases. We're already getting multiple positive cases with guys like Zeke and others, and we haven't even gone. The players aren't even together right now. You're going to see the numbers spike when everyone gets together, and how the league handles that is going to be a very dicey and difficult situation. Do you have any concern about that reality?
Well, we're way above my pay grade here. That's a good one for the good doctor who was on the podcast the other day with us,
Hmm.
Dr. Mel. But
We did talk about that. She
uh,
did give some
yeah,
insight there.
here's my thoughts on where we're at with this thing right now, and that's the fact that I am shocked that they still haven't canceled the first couple weeks of the preseason. I think that has to be done, just so they can get a couple more weeks extra time to kind of look at this thing. So, uh, you know, is it discouraging to hear kind of these reports come out about the Cowboys and the Texans players, a few of them? Yeah, but also, I think if you probably properly research those stories, those probably a good part of those players, I don't think they happen in locker rooms, obviously. So
Sure.
these are obviously, maybe some poor, and I'm guessing poor social distancing practices.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I forget Zeke. I think someone explained what happened with Zeke. Someone in his inner circle was tested positive, so he got tested. But the NFL is obviously going to have a lot of tests, and anytime you have a lot of tests, you're inevitably going to have a lot of positive cases. That's just the percentages and the math of it all. And so you could have a situation where you have 5 players to a team that may be quarantined, and it may not be for the 2 weeks like Dr. Mel talked about. But if it happens on a Friday, you probably aren't playing for a Sunday, and that's going to be, I think, one of the biggest issues. What happens if Ben tests positive, or a starter just in general tests positive, or a whole offensive line group tests positive and they can't play? What is going to happen? That, I think, is going to be the most difficult. Many things will be difficult about this, but that to me is the biggest issue and hurdle that is going to materially affect these games on Sundays.
The great Matthew Marks, he wrote up what Jim Harbaugh had to say in a very candid. I know Harbaugh's not a favorite of Steelers Nation for sure, but when he does speak on certain subjects, he's good, and he was very candid the other day on the radio talking about, look, some of these things, look, it's impossible to, to put some of these things in place here. What are they going to do with the huddle? Make everybody stand 6 feet, apart
Hmm.
in a huddle? Just some of the math is not adding up here.
Yeah, like you said, it's above our pay grade, but it is, to me, I think, the one thing that could really change the scope of this season. Jimmy Barbaди, yo, that Cardinals touchdown was incredible. What Marty B, referring to Martavis Bryant, could have been. You think we got a fourth round value out of the pick despite everything? At least it turned into a third. Colbert is a magician. Yeah, I think in hindsight, knowing what they got for him in the trade to Oakland and what they got for him at the time, and that a lot of fourth rounders do nothing, it's disappointing because his career could have been so much more than what it was. But I think it was a good pick relative in hindsight.
Man, that's another thing when you go back and you're just watching those two big plays that I just wrote up just recently, man. You look at him and the way he glide, I mean, just effortlessly could get down the field, and I've often referred to him as kind of ran like a gazelle.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's what frustrates me when some people try to compare Chase Claypool to him, because it's totally different the way that those two players, in my opinion, run or ran and got open down the field there. I mean, Martavis I mean, he could fly. Look at what he did in that game against the Bengals, getting open way downfield. When that guy got separation too, he usually run away from people. He'd widen it when the football was in the air.
Hmm.
And then you look at that play, the long one with on the short slant by Landry Jones. Man, at one point when he cuts back towards the right sideline, there's like 5 or 6
Yeah,
Cardinals players in the frame,
right. He
and
dusts
you think,
Patrick Peterson.
right, and you wonder how the hell did he score on that, And I put this on Twitter, I think a day or so ago. There, it makes you wonder what he could have been had he not had the issues that he had.
Yeah, absolutely. You
I
never know.
remember writing. I remember writing up something on the site, a couple years back, something along the lines, he could be the NFL's best deep ball threat since Randy Moss, and that was about the time I think the tires started to come off
Hmm.
the cop car. Uh, but there was a time where you thought, man, this guy really could be one of the greatest deep ball threats in the game.
I will circle back to the questions in a second, but AJC asked one about Bryant says, "What was Martavis Bryant's critics coming out of college?" I assume what were the negatives on Bryant? I think it was just a lack of production, and there were those rumors and concerns about off the field stuff with Bryant coming out of Clemson.
I think it was just that not elite number production as far as catches go. I mean, he definitely had the production per
Right,
catch.
but just
You know?
the receptions, the volume, I should say.
Right, and then just the worry about the head not being screwed
Hmm.
on too tight.
And Clemson's route tree back then was still fairly simple. He was a lot of screens and goes. That was kind of the bulk of his route tree, and so there was a question about completeness as a receiver. Tim Ray, if the Steelers rebuilt a team from scratch with Colbert and current staff, what position do you think they would fill first on both sides of the ball? Okay, so I assume it's a coaching staff and no one on the 53. Obviously, you're going to look for quarterback first. I think this team is built through the offensive line, so that would be second. Get your quarterback, protect your quarterback, and then on the defensive side of the football, I think they're going to go pass rusher. I think this defense lives off that pass rush, that edge rush, and so that's where I think they would start theoretically on paper for a blank roster.
What did Bill Parcells always used to say?
What get a quarterback, get someone that can protect the quarterback, get someone that can attack the quarterback. Those were the three
That's right.
tenets. Yep.
And I stand. I'm still holding his hand when it comes to that. Those are the three things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Muted Genome. Hey Dave, how about a series show the longest bubble screen plays? LOL. I like that one. He has my vote.
Yeah,
Hard.
the only thing is we don't have charting go back. It's hard to go back in a chart because not everything is labeled exactly that. We label passing distance for the last couple of years, but if I could, I would. And but yeah, I get the joke there.
Hard Punk Core Alex, I don't know where you live, but I assume it's relatively close to Pittsburgh. Any plans to ride the steel curtain coaster at Kennywood? Is Kennywood even open right now? But even if it is or when it is, no, I am not a roller coaster guy. I am feet on the ground type of guy. So not gonna happen.
I never really was either. Now, obviously, as women come into your life, you you do some things that you normally wouldn't do. But even to this day, I'll do it, but I'll do it begrudgingly.
And I got to be tall enough to ride some of these, and that can be an issue.
My
Eric,
my my wife has jumped off of a perfectly good building before, and she's also jumped out of a perfectly good airplane before.
she is crazier than me. I'll tell you that, but in a good way. Aaron Young, is it time to consider Edmonds a bust in the secondary? No, I have had many criticisms of Edmonds. I wrote up in my One Step to Take series what he has to do in 2020. He has to be a bigger and better playmaker, but he is not a bust. He is not Jarvis Jones. He is not Artie Burns. He is not Limas Sweet or Senquez Golson. He may be underwhelming as a first round pick. There's a case to be made for that. And again, his career is far from over. So let's not write that chapter yet, but he is not going to be in that Burns Jones realm.
That old fella had an issue with you on the Twitter machine.
Yeah, that guy, he has an issue with a lot of things I say. Well, he has some good back and forth. But you don't consider Edmonds a bust, I assume.
No, no, but look, he certainly hasn't lived up to his draft position yet, and he's got a one giant step to take in
Hmm.
2020.
Tim Ray, you guys have done a fantastic job putting out quality content in this time. Don't worry, Alex. That's a reference to my Burns video. Yeah, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. It's not that bad. I'm just restarting a project. No worries there. Mutated Genome, Jalen Samuels 2019 drops. What's your analysis? Is he afraid of contact? I don't think he's afraid of contact. I just think, I don't know what the issue was. I think sometimes he takes his eyes off the ball and tries to look downfield before he secures the football. And so that's an element of it. But he just dropped the ball too much. He had 6 drops last year. I think, over a 10% drop rate. And for a guy that's billed as this really good receiver out of NC State, he's really not. I don't think he's a good receiver, to be honest with you.
One on was just glaring. You could watch him turn up the field. I think it was against the Ravens, wasn't it? Wasn't one of those?
On that screen pass in the end zone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 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 not. No, I don't think it was in the
No?
end zone. I think it was coming out of the backfield
On
to
that
the
out
left
route to the
side.
sideline on, like, 3rd down, I think it was?
No, I think it was actually cutting in.
Uh,
I
I'll
think it was
pull it
more
up.
like a Texas route or something like that on one of them. I'm sure I have it highlighted somewhere
Mhm.
in some of his film there. But yeah, look, this is a guy that's got to hold on to the football better, especially being kind of that jack of all trades guy coming out of college.
Yeah, I'll pull up the, drop reel I
Ooh,
have
that was
also.
an ugly one.
Yeah, okay, so you guys can see it because there's a delay on my end, yeah, I mean, there's 6 drops and, yeah, I just don't know what Jalen Samuels does well. This one against the Patriots made me laugh with him, like, bobbling it 16 times, but, I'm just trying to figure out Samuel's strength to this
That's
team.
the one. That's the one right there. Who was the team in the purple? Was that the Ravens one?
The screen yeah, there's a delay here, so we're not synced up 100%,
Not. It's on back toward. I think it's the
if
third to the last one, second to the last one that I
okay,
was talking
I'm
about.
just gonna let it play through because again, we're delayed. I think I'm ahead of you on my end here, so I'm not entirely sure. What's the play look like? Which drop is it? Is it the screen? Is it? I
It's
don't.
towards the end of the reel there.
Okay. It's
It's after
just.
the
I think
one.
it's yeah, it's just Ravens one. Yeah, I think I just found it. It'll play back here in a second for you.
There it is. It's the Ravens. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So yeah, just gotta take care
that's
of the
the.
football. All right. Let's see. What else do we
So
have?
it's amazing the plays that stick in your head that probably shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I vividly remember that one play, and I can't tell you why, but I do.
Yeah, well, it was not a pretty play, unfortunately for him. How about Martavis? How about that Martavis Bryant screen against the Raiders with some nifty moves? He didn't just have the speed; he had the short area ability as well. Yeah, he was a really impressive athlete. I mean, it was not just the straight line speed; he could accelerate so quickly and get up to speed as well. That was just impressive. Just a remarkable athlete. Martavis Bryant was.
He did have some issues though in some slant stuff though. You know, I think that's where most of his kind of his drops came on. Short of that short intermediate stuff. Sometimes he put a ball or two on the ground.
Frank V should have kept Dobbs. Rudolph never beat him out. They just wanted Rudolph, so they gave it to him. I would say that their confidence in Rudolph is much higher than my confidence in Rudolph. As we've said many times before, Dave and I have had this discussion that this is a big year for Mason Rudolph, and I think it's sink or swim for him in terms of his current and long term future with the Steelers.
I'm not ready to throw out the bathwater, throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. Let's see what happens this summer. It's a key summer, as Alex and I have said several times. This off season, it's the summer of Rudolph.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy Barbati Edmonds is young. I think the game can still slow down for him. And yeah, that's a fair point. Is that I think if Bud Dupree taught us anything, those breakout years can happen a little later than maybe hoped for. But you have to remember, Edmonds is 22, 23 years old, and he's a young guy that's still trying to grow. Verdon Barzy, thank you for being here. Is Jalen the odd man out in the backfield? Agree. What does he do well? Nada. If it was me, I would seriously consider keeping Kareth White over Jalen Samuels. My guess, though, is that assuming they keep 4 running backs, Samuels currently has the inside track over Kareth White. That's my guess. You go in Samuels or White if you had to guess right now.
Oh wow. Uh yeah, that's a flip a coin to me right now. Obviously Samuels uh I think he still gives you a little bit more out of the backfield there,
True.
a little bit more experience, maybe in pass protection, although still not great. Never was, never had to do it coming out of NC State. So I would give the slight advantage to Jalen Samuels, but yeah, I wouldn't bet my house on either one of those guys. To be honest with
At
you.
least with White, I know what he does well. He can be a game breaker. He's fast. He can win in open grass. He showed that in literally his first carry against the Bengals last year, power, and had a good gain off of that. Samuels, he's a jack of all trades, master of none, and even the trades that he does have, I think, are underwhelming. To be honest with you. Tim Ray, article idea, Cheaty, I want a special hat. You'll get no argument here. If I could write every article on Cheaty, I would, but Dave's not going to let me, unfortunately. All right. Couple more questions here. We'll hear for a couple more minutes. Before Dave and I end the stream, as always, we are here every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Here for a few more questions. If you guys want to throw something into the chat, we'll have our podcast tomorrow on Tuesday. We'll have that every Tuesday and Friday. Be sure to like us on Twitter and Facebook. AJC, if Kaepernick is willing to sign a deal like Winston, should the Steelers get him? Again, I would frame that the way that I would frame all the questions that I got about Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton and whatever other quarterback you want to put in there, is that it's just not going to happen. They are locked in with Rudolph, rightly or wrongly. They need to find out what they have with this guy, allow him to get as many reps as possible. And I just don't see them being in the market for any quarterback, including Colin Kaepernick. Jeremy Barbati, this is great, guys. Thanks for doing this. Thank you, Jeremy, for being here and asking questions. Solarverse 6, given Connor and Snell's game is similar and White's and McFarland's as well, wouldn't it be smart to keep those four in case one goes down? The backup plays similar. That's not a huge change in game plan. Yeah, that's an argument to be made for that. I think you still look at the guys that can do the most for you, the guys that can help you on special teams, and they're just the best players, period. But I think White will have the opportunity, and Dave, as you say, these things have a funny way of revealing themselves and working themselves out.
Unfortunately, when the dust clears, we'll say, well, see, funny way to work that one out, but
Yep.
it happened. Here's some breaking news for you from Ian Rappaport.
Okay.
Eagles standout guard Brandon Brooks tore his
Mm,
Achilles, source confirms. A brutal loss. Of course, an Achilles is probably uh, gonna and now Brandon Brooks is confirming this on Twitter as
mm,
well too. What a
terrible.
good player and what a huge loss for the Eagles on their offensive line, and that's yet another team. I think the Steelers play in the first quarter of the season, is it not?
Yeah, I think it is. So yeah, that's a big loss. Brooks, one of the best guards in football, and he dealt with a lot of stuff off the field, anxiety stuff. He's been very open and honest about mental health, and to have that kind of physical injury at his age is devastating. No question about that.
Man,
Aaron.
you hate to hear this stuff, man. I
Mhm.
mean, you got to be if you're a fan of the game and fan of players in general, and the good ones. You hate to hear this. That makes you sick.
Yep, it does. Aaron Young, Marquise, and DeCastro, both first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think either even close to slam dunk right now. I would give DeCastro the better odds than Pouncey at the moment. I think it's possible for both. I think more likely for DeCastro. I think first ballot right now is a bit too rich, especially seeing the issues for Lyman getting in, especially Alan Faneca.
My God, let's get Alan Fanakin first.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So I think both could be in the conversation. I think DeCastro has a better chance of making it to Canton someday than Pouncey right now.
I would agree with that.
And B. Pouncey had better health issues and stayed healthier throughout his career, be a little different. I think there will be a push from the analytical crowd by the time the Pouncey were to get that conversation 5 years out of the end of his career, where the places like PFF are not fans of Pouncey, and that could influence the decision on him down the road.
They just not guards and centers have it so damn tough, don't they?
They do. They do.
No real stats involved in them and all, and obviously same goes for tackles, but tackles it's easier to see on the TV tape
Hmm.
for some of these voters here. So man, let's get Fanakin first.
Absolutely. Verdon Barzy, if Rudolph doesn't live up this summer, where do they go? Good question. Outside the organization is the only way I can answer that right now. Maybe a draft pick and see what happens from there. Face Windu, Javon Hargrave's projected stat line for this season. I think he's in a good system. He's got a great bunch of D line talent around him with Fletcher Cox and the rest of that group in Philly. I don't have a stat line in mind. I think you can see those sacks go up to like 7 to 8.
10. I think he can have 10.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think he's a really talented guy, and no stat line would surprise me for Hargrave. Jeremy Barbati, I'd like to hear Dave sing "Renegade." You up for it, Dave? I don't want to make you
No,
do it.
no, no. I was a Sticks fan. I'm not a huge fan of Dennis DeYoung, more so Tommy Shaw, and
Hmm.
stuff. Obviously Tommy Shaw, post Sticks, doing some stuff with the damn Yankees and Ted Nugent and all like that. But as a whole, I mean, look, I grew up listening to Sticks, but they're not they're not on my top 20 band list. Let's put it to you that way.
Last question here from Jimmy Fowler. What are your expectations for cornerback Lane in 2020? Great podcast, guys. Thank you, Jimmy. Dave, what are your expectations for Justin Lane entering his sophomore year?
Playing a lot of gunner.
Yep. Hopefully playing it well. Now, if there's
Eh,
an injury on the outside, do you think he's next man up? Do you think it's Cam Sutton, or what's the deal?
I don't see how it can be Lane, to be honest with you, right yet. Especially too with man, you want to talk about this virtual off season
Hmm.
hurting some guys. It hurts those second year guys too, especially the guys that barely played. The Ulysses Gilberts, the Justin Lanes, those kind of guys. So it's hard to imagine. Justin Lane, barring injury, gaining enough trust between now and the start of the season where he would be the first guy off the bench should something happen. So my expectations right now, and hopefully injuries don't strike the Steelers secondary, is that Justin Lane's a damn one of the league's damn best gunners in the league.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I think he did well the last what 4 to 6 weeks of last season when he replaced Hardy as the gunner. And yeah, I had a lot of concerns with him coming out of Michigan State. Still had those concerns in the preseason last year. Bummed I can't watch him in camp this year, but he'll have to make his hay on special teams. All right, guys, thank you for being here for the live stream. Again, we'll be here every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to like us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, Steelers Depot. Dave, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for doing this as usual. Thank you for everybody who watched and attended. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Yep, thank you, Chad. Had a really good crowd on hand, so appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you could be so kind, and we'll talk to you soon.